Howdy, this is Karen from Karen Dawn Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to work a Pico bind off, which is the bind off you see here on this shawl. The main idea behind a Pico bind off is that you cast on some stitches and then bind off more stitches, so that ultimately you bind off all of your stitches, but you are casting on more stitches as you go. You need to double check your pattern to make sure that you use the numbers that are in your pattern. For this one, I am going to cast on 2 stitches. So I've come to the end of my project and I'm ready to work the bind off. So I cast on 2 stitches using the cable cast on method. To do that, I take my right hand needle and I put it in between the 2 stitches. Let's go in between the first 2 stitches on my left hand needle. And then I wrap the yarn as if to knit and pull the yarn through. Then I take that yarn and put it up here on my needle. So I've cast on 1 stitch. Now I do that again, stick my needle in between those 2 stitches, wrap as if to knit, pull the needle and yarn through, and then put that stitch on the needle. Now that I've cast on 2 stitches, I'm going to do some binding off. For this example, I'm going to bind off 4 stitches. So go ahead and knit the first 2 stitches. These are the 2 stitches that you cast on. And then do a regular bind off. Take this first stitch, pass it over that second stitch. That's 1. Knit another stitch. Take this stitch, pass it over this stitch, that's 2. Knit another stitch, pass this stitch over this stitch, that's 3. We need to do 1 more. Pass this stitch over. Now we have bound off 4 stitches. Go ahead and take this stitch that is on your right hand needle and move it over to your left hand needle. Don't twist the stitch, just place it on there. And now we're going to do the same thing. This time when you cast on your first stitch, you'll notice that there's a huge gap in between here, so you can really clearly see where you put your needle. So put your needle in there, wrap, pull the yarn through, place it on your needle. That's 1. Do the same thing again. Needle through, wrap, place it on your needle. Now you've cast on 2 more stitches and we need to bind off 4. So again, you knit the first 2 stitches, take this second stitch, pass it over that, that's 1. Here's 2. You might kind of snug up that gap a little bit. This is 3. And this is 4. Once again, take that stitch on your right hand needle, slip it back over to your left hand needle. And you'll notice that I have these little points that are forming from my bind off. Go ahead and continue that until you get to the end of the stitches to bind off. I've continued working across the stitches on my needle, so I have a couple more of little picots, and now I'm toward the end, so I'm going to show you the final picot. So again, you cast on 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we need to bind off. So you knit 2, and then pass that stitch over, knit 1, pass that stitch over, and notice this time that instead of binding off 4 stitches, we only had 3 stitches to bind off. That's fine, just bind off that last stitch until you have 1 stitch remaining on your needles, break your yarn, and then pull the yarn through to finish off your bind off, And there you have a Pico bind off.